Yes, guys, what's happening? And welcome back to the channel and welcome to today's live stream for match reaction and player ratings to Luton Town versus Chelsea last night. Romelu Lukaku's 15th goal of the season, giving Chelsea a 3-2 win against Luton and advancing to the quarter-finals of the FA Cup. But the game was dominated in the build-up by Roman Abramovich potentially selling the club, and then those fears for us Chelsea fans were confirmed with a statement put out by the club from Roman himself about an hour before kickoff, saying that he's going to be selling the club and a few other bits in there, which we'll get into. I'm delighted again to be joined by Theo from the Shed End podcast, mate. Thanks so much for your time. As always, pleasure to have you on again. Obviously, we'll get into the game itself, but we've got to discuss the elephant in the room. Roman Abramovich selling the club, officially confirmed yesterday through a statement. Obviously, I think Chelsea fans knew that. It was gathering pace throughout the day yesterday. The wheels were set into motion for this with his statement on Saturday before the Carabao Cup final, indicating that all things were heading in this direction. But before we get into the statement, mate, what your initial reaction really to the fact that Roman will be selling the club and Chelsea will have new owners? I mean, I feel a bit sad, to be honest.
It definitely is a bit of sadness to start off. I mean, it's the end of an era. You look at what he's achieved since he's acquired the club. I think it was in 2002, 2003. You can arguably call it the golden era of Chelsea. God knows how many trophies. Some brilliant players have come in through the front door. And it just does feel like a bit of a sad ending. But at the same time, what a way to go. Having won the Club World Cup in February, the last trophy he needed to win every single one possible while he's the owner of Chelsea Football Club. And before anything else, he was, like you said in his statement, he was a fan of the club. It wasn't for business purposes. Yeah. And you could tell that. You compare him to the owners of Liverpool, Arsenal, who just see their clubs as almost businesses or not really understanding how the sport works. He was a fan. He traveled to all the games, home or away. And you could tell he was genuinely cared about the club. And at times when he did have to make those decisions to sack the managers, it did affect him emotionally as well, probably. So, no, really sad to see him go. And it's going to be, like I said, the end of what feels like an era. But fingers crossed, whoever comes in next will be as passionate and engaged as he was.
Yeah, I mean, as you touched on, I'm glad that, it kind of came full circle and he was able to sort of bow out, having won everything at his time at the club. And it was great that he was there in Abu Dhabi for that final on the pitch with the trophy. I think that was quite a fitting end for him. In terms of the statement itself, the guy's really stayed true to his word for basically best part of 20 years. The fact that the club owed him $1.5 billion, and for him to say, you know what, don't worry about that, and then to donate all the proceedings of the sale to a foundation set up to helping people in the terrible situation in Ukraine, just goes to show what a great guy that, he actually is. And he has got, a good heart, despite what people say, despite potential murmurings of dodgy goings on in the past. What are his ties now? No one really knows. But yeah, I think above all, it just shows how much of a fan of the club he is. I mean, what a great gesture as well to kind of bypass that $1.5 billion. I mean, what a financial position to be in, to just be like, oh yeah, don't worry about that.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the icing on the cake when he wrote off his £1.5 million debt, and it goes to show, like you said, it wasn't about the money for him. It wasn't about the business. It was about his passion for the game, the passion for the club, and also the fact he's kind of giving out I think it's the net funds of the sale to the charity for the Ukrainian victims as well. It goes to show that despite what's happening in Russia, despite being Russia, despite maybe his ties to Putin, he still kind of stands for, I want to say, human rights, and probably wants to make his image look better as well. But it's a great way to sign off, and a great gesture from Roman.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I know we might be slightly biased, but I really don't think there is a better football club owner in world football than Roman. As for the reasons we've touched on, the guy wasn't in it to make money. He wasn't in it as a business. He was in it as a fan because he loved the club. He built Cobham. He's made the club kind of self-sufficient as such. We only ever spend money that we get in, which is why we're able to make a profit and still sign a player for £100 million. So he's left the club in a great position. I know he's not gone yet, but I mean, briefly moving on to potential buyers. I don't want to spend too long on this, but come out today that a spokesperson for Sir Jim Ratcliffe, Britain's richest man, part of the Ineos group, owns Nice over in France. He's bid for the club before, I think, a few years ago. Got a spokesperson for him coming out and saying that rumours of him putting a bid in for the club are believed to be untrue. So perhaps that's a no-go, or maybe a bit of a smokescreen to try and cloud his interest. But there's also the interest from the Swiss billionaire, Hans-Jörg Wyss, who would need a consortium of 3 American businessmen to help him get the funds together. I mean, what are your thoughts on any potential new owner? I know it's early days still, and a sale this big and with this much money being involved, and Roman did say he's not going to try and fast track the process. It could still take a while for this sale to go through. Have you got any opinions on what sort of ownership you'd like to see next? I mean, I ideally wouldn't like myself to see like an American owner come in terms, like, I'm not nothing against all Americans, but like an American owner that also owns like an NFL franchise or a baseball franchise or whatever, and they're way more interested in that, and they've just bought this as a business, and all they care about is not trophies of just coming fourth sort of thing. I mean, would you prefer a consortium of people, or would you prefer just an individual?
I think I prefer an individual, if I'm honest. And like you said, I don't really, it's still very early days to kind of assess these people's profiles and judge them. I know that Swiss billionaire is 86.
Yeah.
Which is quite old. And you do wonder when it comes to traveling to games and actually being involved in the club on a day-to-day basis, how committed and engaged he'll be. In terms of, like you just said, I wouldn't want an American owner. No. You kind of feel like I live very closely to Craven Cottage, so I follow Fulham Football Club quite closely. And they're owned, I think, by the Jacksonville Jaguars owner. And since he acquired the club, I think it might be like 2012 or 2011, they've just gone downhill. They've really gone downhill. So it's kind of, you want someone who's kind of committed, who knows about the sport, who's passionate about it. So there's a small sign of me that maybe that English billionaire, being English, maybe he knows about the sport, he knows about the football. But like I said, the most important thing is someone who's committed, engaged, and is involved in the football club on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think it's got to be someone that isn't in it for the business side of things. They're in it because they love football and they love the club and they want the club to do well. And they're kind of like a fan first and foremost, rather than just in it to make money. And, as Chelsea fans, we've not really been in a position where we actively want the owners out and we hate our owners. You see Arsenal, Man United fans constantly going on about the Cronkies, the Glazers. We want them out. We don't want to be in a position where we hate the owner of the football club, because we've been so privileged to have someone that loves the club and has done so many good things and brought us memories that will, in essence, last a lifetime. And, he's given us the Champions League. I never thought I'd see Chelsea win a Champions League, I've got to be honest. We've seen it twice now. We could well see it again. The club's champions of the world. We've come a long, long way, and that's all down to one man, and it's Roman. So, we also have to offer sincere thanks and gratitude for everything he's done for the club. But one last thing, just to round out, it's so frustrating but so predictable that the media coverage of it is just like, it's embarrassing. I don't know if anyone's seen on the BBC last night, if you're watching in UK. I mean, I've got to be honest, I do actually like Gary Lineker. I like Lineker, Shearer and Micah Richards. But last night, the coverage was embarrassing. They make it out as if like Chelsea are part of the reason for the war. The fact is, like, the fans are part of it. And like, why hasn't Roman come out and condemned it? I don't think these guys understand that, people of power that are Russian and severe wealth, that if you come out and publicly condemn Putin, you're putting not only your own life in danger, but your family's life at risk as well. People that have come out and criticised Putin in the past, within a week, they're dead. And for Shearer to sit there and condemn the club when his club, Newcastle, are owned by Saudi Arabian owners who oversee a genocide in the Yemen, and they order for journalists to be killed, etc. Like, it's quite frankly ridiculous. I mean, very briefly, mate, what did you make of the coverage last night and just the media coverage in general? Because it seems to be very anti-Chelsea.
Mate, honestly, I could just echo everything you just said. Just listening to Shearer, Richards and Lineker, I just felt like they were out there to have a go at Chelsea Football Club forget the ownership, forget, the Roman's background or whatever. It just felt like they wanted to criticize Chelsea Football Club. But you've got to separate the two things, politics and football clubs, just like how you mentioned, Newcastle are owned by the Saudi state and they've committed some atrocities in recent years. So I was very disappointed. I was a bit disgusted. I like the three of them, but yesterday they let themselves down, and it kind of backfires in a way. I got so many mates sending me articles about it all, and I just kept replying, like, just separate the two. This is Chelsea Football Club, and this is what's happening in Ukraine and Russia. But don't start thinking that Chelsea Football Club are responsible for what's happening in Ukraine, because that's not the case at all. And like you said, people who speak out about these things, Russians, they get sent to the gulags or whatever. It's happened in the past with some oligarchs. So you have to be very careful. And I don't think Abramovich is going to be publicly talking about Putin in that way. But no, they've let themselves down. It was really disappointing to hear. And I just want the media to just quiet down, which is maybe now that the sale has happened, you'd hope that would happen.
And I think, his stance is quite clear. Whilst he may not have publicly come out and said something, the fact that he was prepared to go to Belarus and act as an intermediary in peace talks in the current situation, and the fact that the net profits of the sale, he's setting up a foundation to help those in the Ukraine. I think his position is very clear on this matter. So I'm not quite sure why media, etc., are banging on that they want a statement coming from him personally condemning the situation. It's quite frankly ridiculous. We're not going to spend too long on that. We're going to get ourselves onto the game now. You could be forgiven for forgetting we actually had a game yesterday. It's sort of come around. It's like, oh yeah, shit, we've got a match last night. It was always going to be difficult with that story dominating the build-up. You can imagine it's very hard to focus on the game. I know the players try to block these things out, but as Thomas Tuchel said, they've got internet, they've got TVs. It's pretty hard to avoid it when everyone's talking about it, and it's kind of everywhere you look. So the build-up and the preparation for this game would have been severely disrupted. Thrown into the mix as well that we went the full distance in the Carabao Cup final on the Sunday. A lot of players, as Tuchel likes to call it, in overload, so he's kind of protecting them. We saw quite a rotated lineup, to say the least. I think the biggest surprise for us, not necessarily the back five, but the fact that we saw Ruben Loftus Cheek playing in the centre of a back three. I don't think anyone was expecting that. Ruben himself saying after the game that he'd played defence before, maybe when he was about 12 or 13, but not since. But he quite enjoyed playing in the back three last night because he was able to get the ball and come out and join the attacks. But he literally found out a day before the game, he was saying. But other than that, we saw Kennedy, who's been at Chelsea for years but barely played. But it was, other than that, mate, it was pretty much kind of what we were expecting. And what did you make of the two standout decisions? Loftus Cheek in the back line, and obviously Kennedy playing as well, which I'm not sure too many people would have been expecting either.
Yeah, I mean, the Loftus Cheek decision did surprise me. I didn't know he had it in him to play centre back, maybe because of his build and his height. He was an option, but he definitely grew into the game as time went. He looked really comfortable in that position. He almost filled in for that Thiago Silva role where he marshals the defenders forwards, and he almost like that NFL quarterback. He just launches balls forwards, which he did for the Werner goal. In terms of Kennedy, I'll be honest, when we predicted that lineup a couple of days ago, I'd forgotten he was in the squads. Yeah. But he was definitely an option at left wing back, and he looked quite sharp at times. He looked willing to, attempt what he does best, which is a little flicks and tricks, but nothing remarkable from him. He is an option maybe if we need it. We had a couple other options on the bench in Lewis Hall, I think. So it is an option to have, but no real surprises in the lineup. I think we got it pretty. We both predicted Jorginho, Loftus Cheek, and Saul would play.
Yeah,
but so we got that right, and obviously Aspi, Christensen, Chalobah, and Ziyech all still injured, so they're in the future.
Yeah, I mean, it was always, as we said, it was always going to be a tough task. I mean, without the distraction off the pitch, Luton are doing quite well in the Championship this season. Going away from home against lower league opposition is difficult. We've seen a lot of Championship sides do very well in the FA Cup this season. Middlesbrough knocking out Man United and Tottenham in consecutive rounds. We've seen Nottingham Forest knocking out Arsenal and Leicester. I think the gap between the top teams and the teams, particularly in the Championship, in a one-off game is getting smaller, as evidence would suggest from the results this season. But I just had a feeling that this game was going to be a bit of a struggle. We kind of seen it before. Big distractions off the pitch. As I was saying to you before we came live, mate, it had a bit of a feel of that Brighton Super League vibe about it before for that game at Stamford Bridge last season, where, everyone else's mind was on other things. And it I kind of expected it, the start, but I wasn't expecting us to go behind that early. I mean, what are your thoughts when we go 1-0 down inside the first 2 minutes? You're just thinking, can this day get any worse? I mean, it's a good header, but the marking from Malang Sarr is awful.
Yeah, I mean, Saul kind of let himself down yesterday. I think him and Hudson-Odoi were the poor kind of players on the team, but it just felt that beginning of the game felt almost like a carbon copy of the Plymouth one. We fielded a decent lineup, and then we concede very early on, and then we have to kind of fight our way back into the game. And the one thing that did worry me slightly more was we were away from home at Kenilworth Road, which is quite I want to say intimidating ground to play at. You're very close to the pitch for the fans. The players probably won't be used to it. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's even an AstroTurf pitch or plastic pitch. I think I read that somewhere. So it was conditions weren't great, weren't going to be favourable for us. But no, these kind of, like you mentioned, these championship teams, they and these one-off games, they really turn up. Nottingham Forest, even Peterborough, who gave Man City a very good game. Middlesbrough, another one. So I was expecting it to be a tough game. I knew there'd be at least one goal between the two teams, which ended up happening.
Yeah, I mean, we go 1 down early doors, and you're thinking, here we go again. We've seen this before, but fair credit to us. We come back into the game. Obviously, I suppose fortunate, perhaps in a sense that the Luton goalkeeper, the first choice, goes off injured with what looked like a nasty-looking ankle injury. So I guess having the number 2 in, I don't know how much difference that makes. Probably makes a little bit of difference, not perhaps a great deal. And we get the equaliser, and it's actually a very good goal from Saul Niguez, who I believe that's his first goal for the club. It goes down as a Timo Werner assist, but I'm not so sure if he can really take much credit for that. It's not really a pass. I think it almost looks like he's miscontrolled it, and it just ends up at the feet of Saul Niguez. But from the edge of the box, it's a really good finish into the goal. And I thought he was impressive last night.
No, Saul definitely since that. I think the second half of that Wolves game before Christmas, he's really, every time he's played, he's performed. He hasn't really, kind of standout mistakes, and he's got the job done. And he looks like more comfortable as well to play his football, the football that he used to play at Atletico Madrid. So definitely, he looks like a more confident and mature player now. And the goal was a great finish, really, really good finish. He kind of brings back some of those goals he used to score in the Champions League for Atletico Madrid when he'd curl it in. And definitely an option to have, when we've got Kovacic, Kante, or Jorginho who need a bit of a rest.
Yeah, no, I did think he played really well, but you get back level and you just think, okay, we'll get one before the break and we'll kind of be a bit of a formality. But the game settled in, and it was an end-to-end game. Luton were bang up for it, as you said. It's a small stadium. The crowd are right on the pitch. The home fans bang up for it. Intimidating atmosphere, really difficult place to go, and a classic cup tie in essence, really. And, unfortunately, just before the break, we find ourselves 2-1 down. It's a ball over the top, and it is, I don't want to be critical, but it is Malang Sarr again. And
it is.
I can't remember the guy's name, Pollock maybe. He gets played in. Sarr is all over the place. He's through on goal, and it's a nice finish, but it's exactly what you don't want just before half time to go a goal down. I mean, at that point, you're kind of thinking the worst almost. I mean, what were your feelings when you go 2-1 down just before the break? Because we defended that goal quite poorly. To be undone by just a simple ball over the top isn't good. Yeah,
Sar's positioning was all over the place. He wasn't aligned with the other defenders who may be trying to play that offside trap, and you kind of could feel that he hasn't got that same experience as maybe a Rudiger, or there's other players that were alongside him. But now a bit of a bad timing to concede that goal. One bit that gave me a bit of hope is you were heading in that dressing room. Thomas Tuchel would be able to give the team, a bit of a rundown of what he expects in that second half, maybe make some changes as well. And when fair play and credit to the team, when we did come back in that second half, we looked a lot better. We looked a lot more switched on. Werner, Lukaku, Pulisic, when he came on, had good link-up play. So that half-time was really needed after that second goal for Luton Town.
Yeah, I mean, the first half, as we've touched on, not the best, and an uphill task faced us in the second half. And, the longer the second half went on for, and that equaliser wasn't coming, you're kind of fearing the worst. We limited Luton to not a lot, really, other than their goals. And, the changes that you touched on there, I think, did make a difference. We saw Harvey Vale come on for Callum Hudson-Odoi, who was pretty ineffective, and Christian Pulisic came on for Kennedy as well. And we saw kind of a shift in formation more to a 4-2-2, essentially, to try and push for that equaliser. And the equaliser comes, and it's a really good. I think it's a really good goal. It's a great ball over the top from Loftus Cheek to play in Timo Werner. A nice touch and finish, and that's what we want from Werner. To just put the ball in there to score the goals. We haven't seen that enough from him, and he shows there that he can do it, but just not on a consistent basis. But I mean, what are your thoughts on that goal? It was a really great. I thought it was a really nice team goal.
Really good goal. I mean, the Loftus Cheek pass to start off was absolutely sublime, inch perfect. And then the Werner finish for me, is very underrated because he has to control it down and then not put necessarily a bit of power on it, but he has to place it well. And a lot of Werner's goals, you look at them when he has scored, they've been tap-ins. They have been tap-ins, whereas this one was a coolly placed finish in the bottom right corner. And if he's able to add more of those type of goals to his game while he still plays at Chelsea, whether it's the next 3 months or the season beyond that, then he's definitely an option. He's definitely an option, and he brings that energy. I always compliment him for his energy, but if he can add goals and finishes like that, then he's quite a decent player to have.
I mean, it was a weird one for Werner because by all accounts, he got 2 assists and a goal last night, so you think, oh, that's a pretty decent game. He was actually quite poor. I know that sounds like a weird thing to say, but all over socials and stuff, etc., journalists, kind of people within the Chelsea community and stuff, were saying that how poor he actually was, but he still ended up with 2 goals and assists, which is quite mad, really. But we get. Obviously, with them pushing for a winner, 2-2, we're heading into the last 15 minutes and we're thinking, oh, no, the last thing we want is another game going to extra time. We've had a lot of games go to extra time recently. Plymouth in the last round, the Club World Cup final, then the Carabao Cup final. And we're thinking we don't want a 4th game in a month to go to extra time. So it was so critical to push for that winner and find it. And it comes, and again, it's another really nice goal. Loftus Cheek, who really impressed in that midfield role, playing a nice ball into Timo Werner, and he slots it straight across to Romelu Lukaku, who is alert in the box and fires it home. And at that point, it's 3-2, and it's just a case of very much hold on and let's just book our place in the last 8. But that was a nice team goal, and it goes to show that when Lukaku is alert and alive in the box, if you can get the ball into dangerous areas in the box, he will more often than not finish, and he showed that yesterday, and that was his 15th goal of the season. And I know it was only against against Luton, but in previous rounds, I know he scored against Chesterfield, but he really struggled, and he struggled against Plymouth as well in the last round, and that was both against lower opposition. But I felt it was promising performance when he came on in the Carabao Cup final, and I felt this was another half decent performance today. So signs of a little bit of revival. What did you make of his goal? And as I said, if you get the ball into him in the box and he's alert, he will finish.
Yeah, give Lukaku those type of balls and he will score. He very rarely misses. A lot of the times, even in the first half, balls weren't placed properly to him or blocked before they could get to him. But he has looked quite lively recently. When he came on against Liverpool at Wembley on Sunday, very unlucky not to get that goal because I thought it was a great finish, the one that was supposedly offside. And his body language looks a lot better as well, celebrating goals, celebrating with teammates when they score goals, and that's what you want to see supposedly from a player who in December wanted to leave. You do want to see a bit of love for the badge, for the club, for the teammates, for the manager. So it is quite reassuring to see, and I think he will slowly grow into the game. He just needs to find that partnership and link up play with the Werners, the Havertz, the Pulisic's, the Mounts, the Hudson-Odois, and the goals will come.
I mean, I still think, I know a lot of Chelsea fans think it's done and it's not going to work and we need to move on, but I still feel that with £100 million investment that we've put in, his season has been disrupted by injury, by COVID, etc. I still feel that this can work out. It's just going to take a little bit of time, and it's going to take a lot. I think it's going to take longer than people are expecting, and that people have got the patience with. But I do feel that if we can strike up a partnership and strike up something helpful for Lukaku, then I do feel that there is legs for this to work. And ultimately, he is the best goal scorer at the club. And it's that situation where when he does play, we're a lot more clinical, but we're a little bit less fluid in attack. But then we've got the other situation where he doesn't play. We look more fluid and it's better movement, but we lack any killer instincts because we haven't really got an out-and-out finisher on the pitch. So it's kind of striking that balance. Before we get into the player ratings, let's just quickly get into a couple of things. We need to give Werner more chances. I don't know. It's a difficult one, this, because whilst it's common knowledge that he's not been good enough since he's been at Chelsea, you look at his goal contributions and stuff, he has done all right. But again, as Pep says, people are so obsessed with statistics and football. What's happened to the good old-fashioned eye test? And more often than not, if you watch a Timo Werner game of football, despite what the numbers might state, he's not really been good enough, if we're being perfectly honest. So, I mean, does he deserve more chances? Potentially. Is he going to get them? I'm not sure. Will he be sold this summer? If we can find a buyer, and Borussia Dortmund have been linked, I wouldn't be surprised if Chelsea looked to move him on. What's this? We need to win. Hold on, let's bring that up. We need to... Oh, no, not that one. We need to win the FA Cup for Roman. Yeah, this would be a fitting way to bow out kind of for Roman. I suppose we can add an FA Cup, having lost back-to-back finals the last 2 years. What else we've got here? Hit that like button. Yeah, guys, smash a like on this video. Please do subscribe to the channel. Really appreciate all of your thoughts. Mate, you'll enjoy this one. Lukaku would have scored more goals if we had Fabregas. Well, yeah, he definitely would have done. We do miss a creative midfield player that can just put balls over the top. But I do think that if Loftus Cheek was given a genuine run in the team, he could provide something similar to that. But let's get into the player ratings very quickly then. Let's start in goal then, mate. Kepa got the nod. I've got to be honest. I mean, he made some good saves, but for the goals, I don't really think there was an awful lot that he could have done. He could have done about them. Really, it wasn't like, oh god, he definitely should have saved them. I mean, what did you make of Kepa's performance overall? I guess letting 2 goals in, it's quite hard to give him a high rating. But other than that, he made saves when required and didn't really do anything else wrong.
No, the 2 goals, you can't really fault him. They were kind of goals you'd expect Luton to score. They were placed in an angle where he couldn't do much. In terms of outside those goals, I thought he made the necessary saves that he needed to. Nothing, remarkable in terms of those saves. They were kind of saves you'd expect him to make. So I think it's a 6 or something like that, or 5.5 is a fair rating for him.
Yeah, I think a 6 is fair. And, it's good for him to get a game again so soon after the disappointment of the cup final, kind of put that behind him, get another appearance under his belt. Moving on to Antonio Rudiger, who is obviously, mate, he shares a birthday with you as well. So that's a nice thing to have. Rudiger, again, perhaps if other players had been fit and available, we probably wouldn't have seen him in this game. But the situation was what it was, and he had to play. And not one of his best games, but still looked pretty good, solid defensively. But yeah, I mean, he was better than average, but nothing special. I mean, I'll probably go with a 6.5, but he was solid, if not spectacular.
Yeah, 6.5. I'm happy with that. And like you said, he kind of needed to play just to bring that experience to that back three, given that Saul's quite inexperienced and Loftus Cheek's not really used to that position. So he needed at least a Silva or maybe a Rudiger alongside the two. But 6.5 is a good rating.
Yeah, and then moving into Loftus Cheek, as we touched on, in the middle of that back three, I actually thought he was probably Chelsea's best player on the pitch. I thought he was really, really good. He did what, considering he's not a defender, I thought he defended pretty well when called upon in that back three. And then, he made good runs forward. And then when we switched to a 4-2-2, he also looked dangerous with some great passes, and we saw a good assist for him as well. I think an 8 out of 10 for Ruben. I really do think he was that good. And now that he's put that small injury behind him, I really do think that kind of behind Kante and Kovacic, I actually think he could be ahead of Jorginho in the rotation now, in my opinion.
I mean, I just saw that Werner got voted man of the match, probably because people have looked at the stats and saw 2 assists and a goal. But for me, Ruben was my man of the match, playing in a position that's not natural to him, dribbling past players, assisting a brilliant goal. So I think 8, I was even willing. I don't know if you've got planned to give a player a higher rating than 8, but yeah, I think I'm happy with 8. If no other player gets more than that. Yeah,
I think he was really good, and it bodes well for the rest of the season. We just need Ruben, like a lot of other players, to just put some consistency in with his performances, because we can see what he can do, but we just need to see it on a more consistent basis. But moving on to Malang Sarr, and we're going to probably be a bit critical here, and it's probably going to be one of the lowest ratings of the day. But what I will say first is he has been very good for Chelsea in recent weeks. He's probably played a lot more football than he was would ever have expected to play this season. And more often than not, he has done really well for the side when called upon. But last night was probably one of his worst performances in a Chelsea shirt. Positionally, he was all over the place. He was pretty much at fault for both goals. And yeah, it wasn't his best night. And I think realistically, you're probably looking at a 3 or a 4 out of 10. He was quite poor, if we're being nice.
Yeah, probably his worst display in a Chelsea shirt. I'd have to agree. Arguably at fault for both of the goals. Probably he kind of grew in confidence in those kind of League Cup games when he played against Spurs, but yesterday's performance was woeful. So I think a 3 is a fair result.
Yeah, it was terrible, and the sooner he can move on from that, the better. What was that? I understand Tuchel playing players out of position, but not giving Ruben a run out as an attacking 8. I'll never understand. Yeah, it's really frustrating. I mean, I know players, a lot of fans bang on about players not playing in their preferred position. You know, the likes of Christian Pulisic, etc. But I don't think there's been a player more played out of their actual position than Ruben. You know, the guy just needs a run. If we continue with a 4-3-3 or we 4-2-2 or whatever, Ruben as an 8 is a really viable option. And we've seen under Surrey that he can do well in that position. So it would be nice to see him get some opportunities there. But I don't understand why, he wasn't given more of an opportunity as an 8. Moving on to Callum Hudson-Odoi, starting at right wing back in the team after injury. Apparently, I've read a few things to say that it was pre-agreed that he would only play an hour before the game because he's obviously not fully fit. He was going through the pain barrier a little bit, which might explain his performance. But this wasn't great from Callum at all. I thought he really struggled. And I don't know why he seemed to have... his ability to take players on last night seemed to desert him. And I've got to be honest, it really wasn't great. And I thought at best he was average. So, I mean, realistically, I'm looking at a 4.5 or a 5. Yeah,
he was the second worst performer of the night after Saul. So 4.5 is fair. I saw a list of his stats. It was almost like 0 interception, 0 crosses completed, 0 this, 0 that, 0 that. So I think 4.5 is more than fair.
Yeah, moving on to the other side, Kennedy, almost a forgotten man, came back from his loan in Brazil in January. Probably wasn't really expecting him to play anywhere at all, really. But he gets an opportunity. I've got to be fair to him, considering the guy's not really played a lot of football for a while. I actually thought he acquitted himself quite well. He defended pretty well. He got forward well. I think he had an opportunity where he made a good save, forced the keeper into a good save. All things considered, I actually think Kennedy did pretty well. So I'm looking at maybe a 6 or a 6.5 for him.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. You didn't really expect more from that performance, and it was kind of better than we thought. And like you said, he unlucky not to score. He took on players well, attempted a few good dribbles, and also his passing was pretty accurate. So I think 6.5 or even borderline of 7 would have been a fair rating.
Yeah, I think he did very well. Moving into midfield then, let's start with Saul Niguez. To be honest, for me, behind Loftus Cheek, or probably equal or just beneath second best performance. I thought it was one of his best performances in a Chelsea shirt. You know, he was constantly on the ball. He was a goal threat. He had a good header in the first half. He had a couple of shots where he was close. He takes his goal really well. It's a great finish. And this was a good display from Saul. And, as you touched on earlier, he has pushed on since that game against Wolves before Christmas. And he's put his early poor performances behind him. And he has shown that when called upon, he can be quite effective for this Chelsea side. I felt that he was really quite good. I mean, I'm looking at probably a 7.5 or an 8, the same as Ruben.
I think given that he hasn't been playing a lot of football lately, I want to give him an 8. He got the goal and he was unlucky not to score in the second one. It was a great save from the keeper in that 1-on-1. But his overall movement and his passing and his crossing was spot on. So I'm happy with that 8.
Moving on to Jorginho, then back in the side. He's been out of favour in recent weeks. He has played a lot of football. But then he's also, when he's been called upon in recent weeks, not been delivering to his usual standard and has found himself out the side. He was backing his captain last night. I thought he was okay. Again, it was nothing special. It was kind of just solid and a fairly standard Jorginho performance. It's one of those where he was average, but I mean, he was probably maybe a 5 or a 5.5. It was nothing standout from him.
No, I'd have to agree. It was a pretty average performance. He got the job done. But he's one of those type of players, if you take him out that system and that team, you do notice a difference. So it's almost, he sets the tempo, he sets the pace of the game. but yesterday was probably a slightly below par for Jorginho's level.
Moving on to the front three then. Mason Mount, who obviously back in the side, trying to put the disappointment of the cup final, those two big misses behind him. I thought he was quite effective. He was, I mean, for me, probably the lowest rating of the front three, I'd say. I felt Lukaku and Werner probably more influential in this game than Mason was, but it was, again, he was okay. Showed some good moments, nothing spectacular. Didn't really light the game up, but he wasn't awful. I mean, I'm looking at probably a 6 or a 6.5, but we will need him as well as other attackers to kind of up the performance level, because it wasn't great.
I'll be honest, those opening 20, 30 minutes, I don't think he touched the ball once. I actually forgot he was playing, but he, like other players, he grew into the game and he did contribute to a few of those goals, was there in the build-up play. But definitely the worst ranked amongst the three attacking players. So I think a 6 is probably a fair rating.
Yeah, I'd say a 6 is a fair rating. Moving on to Timo Werner, we touched on him earlier. His first start in what seems like a long time. He showed promise when he came on in the Carabao Cup final, rewarded with a start last night. 2 assists and a goal. He did play. Look, if you look at it just on that, you'd say it was a good game, but there were, particularly in the first half, there were large parts of his game where he was just awful. He really was, and he's a bit of an enigma, really. I'm not really sure. He's so inconsistent, but the finish was good, and the assist for the Lukaku goal was good as well. So, whilst he didn't play that well, he still was involved in key moments, and I feel like he does need a 7, but he was also quite poor, which sounds like a massive contradiction, but it was a weird game for him.
No, I definitely see what you mean. It's kind of you take away those 2 goals, those 2 assists and the goal, and you're looking at probably a 4 or something like that. But the fact he got those assists and he got the goal, which brought us back into the game, I think 7 is a very fair rating, and he did have an impact on the game.
He did have an impact on the game. Moving on to Romelu Lukaku then, back in the starting lineup, building on his promising cameo from the bench in the Carabao Cup final. I felt he did okay, he held the ball up quite nicely. First half, he had a couple of shots where he forced a good save from the keeper. And then, as we said, what we signed him for, he gets the winner, a ball across the box. He's alert. And in that penalty box, when he's alert, he's going to finish if you give the ball to him in that position. And that's exactly what happened. And it's a good finish for the goal. And he fires us into the last day. And hopefully he can push on from here. But, I mean, I'm probably looking at maybe a 6.5 from Lukaku, but it was definitely an improved performance. Definitely
an improved performance. And he built on that cameo from that League Cup final, like you mentioned. And you just hope now that he can just continue adding goals to his games and his play, because we will need him, for the remaining Champions League fixtures probably and the next Premier League games. So you just want him to score, even if it's a FA Cup game, a League Cup game, or a league fixture. You just need those goals from him, and if he's able to add those, then it could be he could cement a position for a top 4 run.
Yeah, no, 100%. He's going to be crucial for the remainder of this season, for our run in this FA Cup, for our trying to secure the top 4, and for hopefully going deep into the Champions League again. We are going to need him to be scoring goals. And ultimately, it was a better all-round performance. But for me, as long as he's scoring goals and he's getting in those goal-scoring positions, I'm not too bothered about the other aspects of the performance. But yeah, his 15th goal of the season, getting Chelsea a hard-fought 3-2 win against Luton Town, and we advanced to the quarter-finals. So again, we're 1 game from Wembley, because the semi-finals of the FA Cup do take place at Wembley. I never quite understand why they do that, but it is what it is. And the draw for that is tonight. Theo, very briefly before we round out, mate, we've obviously got a few championship sides in there. And then we've got the big guns from the Premier League. So, ourselves, we've obviously got Liverpool, Manchester City. Any preference for the quarterfinal draw? Or I suppose when you start getting to the business end of tournaments, it's teams are there by merit. And obviously with less teams in there, you've got a higher chance of drawing a decent side.
I'm going to be quite controversial and say that I'd rather avoid the championship teams being the Forests and the Boroughs, because they're on a run of form there. They've got that hype. They've got that winning mentality at the moment, having knocked out the likes of Leicester, Arsenal, Tottenham, Man U. I'd obviously want to avoid Liverpool and City up until maybe the semis or the final. So that leaves us kind of with a Southampton, Crystal Palace or an Everton if they win tonight. So I'll take any of those 3 teams.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, if we can avoid Liverpool and City, then that would be great. Ultimately, if we don't, you've got to beat the best teams to get to the final anyway. So, if we get them in the quarters, we get them in the quarters. But I agree with you. If we can avoid one of those and get ourselves maybe a Crystal Palace or a Southampton, then you'd be pretty happy with that. But yeah, guys, that rounds out the match reaction and player rating streams. Thanks so much for getting involved in the chat. Thank you for tuning in. If you're watching back, hope you enjoy it. Guys, please do smash a like on this video. Please do subscribe to the channel. Heading towards the 400 subscribers mark. So please do help me get there. If you're not subscribed to the channel and you've watched this or you're watching it back, then please do subscribe and, spread the word. Tell your mates about it. Get them to subscribe. Would really appreciate all of your support. Theo, thanks so much for your time, mate. Really appreciate it. It's always a pleasure. Guys, make sure you check out Theo's YouTube channel as well and podcast. Subscribe to his channel. It is on the banner below, and I've linked it in the description. Some really good stuff on there, so please do go and check it out. And it's his birthday today as well, so give him a present and subscribe to some stuff. Mate, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for taking the time on your birthday. And guys, we'll catch you in the Burnley preview tomorrow. The matches are coming thick and fast, so we'll see you then. Until then, up the Chelsea.